Welcome to the Monster Time Machine Monster Closet, your retro horror movie review podcast where we take nightmares from the past and relive them in the present. This week's movie, The Conjuring. Released in the year 2013, directed by James Wan, written by Chad Hayes and Carrie W. Hayes. It's a movie about paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren work to help a family terrorized by a dark presence in their farmhouse. I'm your Time Machine host, Chad, and I want to introduce you to my Monster Closet co-host, a man that wants to be left on an island, Mr. Scaredy Pants himself, Jamie. What's up?
What's up, Chad? I think last time I wanted to visit the island so I could hide from Freddy's dead. This one, Conjuring, might be one of my desert island movies. I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Curious to hear more. It's the thing. It's been a while since we connected. What's Have you watched anything like horror movie related other than The Conjuring since our last Monster Closet podcast?
Honestly, I haven't. I know that the R.L. Stine Fear Street trilogy came out on Netflix. I've got that in my queue. I really want to watch that. Have you seen that come across
I
at all?
have not. I have not. Is that, let's see if I'm crossing my wires here, but R.L. Stein, is that the same as like Goosebumps?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
same
All
writer.
right.
I guess I never read Fear Street. I think they might have been targeted for like a slightly older audience than Goosebumps.
Right. Because Goosebumps was like, what, like pre-teen? I feel like that was still pretty young, right? Like
Yeah, I think preteen's about right.
preteen.
I felt like I was like 10 to 12, 13 when I was reading Goosebumps. Maybe even
Yeah.
earlier than that.
My oldest loves those movies.
Oh, the ones with
Me,
Jack Black?
yeah.
Oh, good call. Those are
Yeah.
great.
He
I didn't
loves
see the
those.
second one, but the first one I thought was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've seen the second one a lot. A lot, but he goes through these phases where he just wants to go back and watch Goosebumps, but yeah, he loves them. He kind of likes those, like, I think that might be his shtick. Is He's on his way to loving the scary and frightening, the horror,
Oh, you
because he
got a
also,
horror fan in the
yeah, I
making.
think so. I think so. He also likes the Nightmare Before Christmas. He likes things that are kind of on the darker side. I think for his, I mean, he just turned 5, so um, God, what else does he like too that he's into? And plus, been watching this prank show on Disney Plus called Walk the Prank, which is kind
The
of, so I think
prank.
there's a little bit of darkness in that too, because I think pranking is, you walk the fine line of making someone laugh or getting shot or stabbed.
Right.
But but yeah, I haven't really seen anything horror related either outside of watching The Conjuring this last week that I can think of. But yeah, I've been watching some other cool things too. But I'm gonna hold that for and record Jackie Brown
Cool.
later this night. So we'll look for that. But right now, let's get on to the topic of the week, The Conjuring. First, we'll start off with some box office and some ratings and reviews, some critic notes, and then we'll dive into our thoughts on the film. So the box office at a budget of 20 million and raked in 319 million, so I would call that a success. It released during the summer of 2013, July 19th to be exact. So, well, almost 8 years to the day, right? If I'm doing my math correctly.
Yeah, it does not feel that old, by the way. I don't know how you feel about it, but it doesn't feel 8 years old to me.
No, I think it's aged well so far. And I know typically for Movie Time Machine, we've been trying to keep movies like older than 10 years, but we're making an exception to this because, yeah, I just came across The Conjuring and interested in the lore. But we'll get to that later as we go into ratings and reviews. We'll go through Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomato has an 86% critic score and 83% audience score. IMDb, it has an average of 7.5 out of 10, and the Metacritic average is 68%. I did for fun here. I just pulled out like the top like Metacritic scored review on here, and how this works is it
Nice.
just takes whatever metric like that critic uses. If it's like 4 out of 4 stars would be the top, or 5 out of 10, or whatever metric they use, and it puts it into a percentage. So out of 100. So the San Francisco Chronicle here would give it. It would be 100, and one of the quotes I read from the review was, "I'd be shocked if I were to see a better horror film in 2013." And Roger Ebert, but not the Roger Ebert, this is from RogerEbert.com, one of the critics on there. gave it a 25% by
Boo.
saying The Conjuring is as toothless as The Conjuring is as toothless as it is because it's two different kinds of boring. The film's plot is examined exhaustively whenever loud noises aren't blaring and random objects aren't teasingly leaping at you from the corner of your eye.
Yeah, I disagree
So,
with most of that.
yeah, so those are the critics' thoughts. Jamie, I want to hear your thoughts on why I want to say, love this movie. I've heard you talk about this, I feel like, quite a bit in the past, and this got a lot of hype recently because you wanted to see it when it released. The latest film released on HBO Max, the third Conjuring movie. But tell me what you like about this movie.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to love here. I mean, first of all, I think people who know movies will just appreciate how well technically this movie is made. And I don't have a great vocabulary for that sort of thing, but that's what, you know, more informed technical film reviewers say. So I would agree with them. But you can see it, even if I don't know exactly what they're doing with the camera, you can feel it the way it moves throughout the house, spends time with the characters, really establishes scene and setting. So it's very well made. And I think what's interesting about this is we kind of talked about this when we did The Witch is if there's a movie that genuinely scares me, I often have a hard time revisiting it because I have to, work up my courage to see it again. And this almost crosses the line with that, but I think that this is one in spite of how much it scares me, I still really enjoy it so much. And I think for two reasons. Like I said, it's really well made, and well, three reasons. It kind of has a happy ending. Like bummer horror movie endings definitely serve their place, and there's certain ones I like, but I think by and large I prefer it when everyone's okay. But I think it's because Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are so good, and the way that they set up Ed and Lorraine Warren as these characters who kind of come in and are real life Ghostbusters. I think that's a really strong approach that they took.
Yeah, I like your comment about just how the film is presented. I think a lot. I see a lot of areas where like I don't see a lot of like CGI. If it is, it's like worked in very well. A lot it seemed like there's lots of practical effects in here, or just very like clever use of other tricks to make film. So that really surprised me because I was kind of expecting like this era. I feel like we're starting to get like heavy CGI, like everything is today. At least within the last decade, I feel like, and you know how I love CGI.
It's your favorite.
Yes, yeah. And you talking about like the kind of the happy ending horror movie, or the part of this film which also kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't really expecting that, just kind of how it did end on this high note. Well, kind of.
Hmm.
Which I have a question for you in a second here on that.
Sure.
Um, since I haven't seen this, is the only one I've seen in this movie franchise family lore, but yeah, so I really dug that, and yeah, the chemistry between the two, um, the actors for this portraying Ed and Lorraine Warren. I really like too, which they actually kind of grew on me because in the beginning they came off to me personally as like, oh, they kind of they kind of come off as kind of icky evangelicals,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
But I mean, I think yeah, the stuff that kind of goes on throughout towards the end, like I kind of dropped that, and just kind of bought into what the movie was and is, and went along for the ride. So yeah, I'm still intrigued to kind of dive more into some of these other movies and like the lore, and especially with the ending. I just want to jump to it and ask you quick now,
Yeah.
is the very end of the film when it shows like the music box and like that has like the little turning mirror on it, right? Like the
Yep.
little swirl, whatever, and it stops in that last shot and the movie's done and the credits roll. Is it like does it stop on that monkey toy? Is that what's in the background?
Oh, interesting. And you just kind of sparked a memory. I think that's kind of popped up in like horror message boards. I think they've identified it like you. Like what's the story behind this monkey toy? I didn't notice it, but
Oh,
but now that you said that, I remember. other dialogue and other people bringing this up. So it wouldn't surprise me if something is in the work for that, haunted item. I think it's
Oh,
just to say
interesting.
that, like, these ghosts are still with us, like they may have beaten Bathsheba, but like we haven't seen the last of the Warrens or like the evils they're gonna face. But like I said, now that you said that, I feel like I have heard that somewhere else before about the monkey specifically.
Good old Bathsheba.
Bathsheba.
I love that name. That cracked me up,
Oh, I know.
actually.
Well, and I just want to say really quick too, I'm glad you liked it because I got to say, I feel like I've got a generally good idea of your taste, but once in a while, I will be so wrong, and it'll be a Chad hates this movie, and I I'm happy you enjoyed this one because correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes it's with a lot of like popular movies that are in the zeitgeist. Maybe not.
What's that? I just saying,
Just
like, my.
the ones that you have a strong aversion to. Not as like a hard rule, but I do think that's true of some of them.
Yeah, I mean, just because I think I tend to look at those a little more critically or harshly, I guess. I probably, that raises the bar a little bit for me on what I'm expecting or what I want to see. I'm guessing, but I went in for me though, like before even watching this, I think it was, yeah, you were talking about The Conjuring 3, and I just started doing some kind of little bit of research on it. And I can't, God, what I can't. Oh, you know what it was? This is what it was. Is I started watching The Conjuring and I saw like the opening scene with the Annabelle doll.
Uh huh.
And I was like, whoa, wait, wait, wait. I've seen this doll on like a different movie box art or something, movie poster or something. So I Googled Annabelle, and then that opened up the door to like, holy shit. Like, I didn't know all these like strings were tied to this movie franchise. I didn't know all these.
Oh.
So like Annabelle and like the Nun and how all these things kind of interconnect in a way, and like these prequels and sequels and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of in. This is like, what finally got me into like, actually I'm actually going to sit down and watch the MCU and go through this. I know I'm probably not going to like or enjoy, or I'm probably going to enjoy some more than others. And um, I kind of just jumped in. I know I'm going to be along for the ride, and yeah, this one surprised me. Actually, I watched it twice, and after the first time, I was kind of like, whatever
Hmm.
about it. I was like, it's good. It's not great. It's not bad. But then I watched it again actually this morning because I woke up at 3 a.m. for some reason, and
Oh shit.
I watched it on my phone, which I know if James is hearing this, he'll poo poo it. But I watched it on my phone, and I put on headphones, like some nice headphones, and watched it. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty cool because a lot of the cool like things they do sonically with
Uh
like
huh.
the sound choices that they make, it's really cool, and that actually flipped like my kind of thoughts on the film just by that, on these sonic cues that they give you throughout the movie, and just kind of some really cool sound effects, and which I thought was pretty entertaining. And maybe because I was watching it in the dark at, really early in the morning too, kind of tired. So maybe that added to it. But yeah, I really like that.
I agree. I think setting is everything. Like when you choose to watch a horror movie, it's going to be
Yes.
way scarier if it's at night or I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Theaters, the theater itself is hit or miss. Sometimes that's way scarier because it's big and you can't escape, and other times it's like I know that it's noon outside and I'm gonna go
Right.
do an
Right.
errand after that or whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but I think you're right. The setting can definitely influence your mood and how you watch a movie. And it's interesting you said that because I remember too. Um, I I liked the movie after my initial viewing, but I was probably like, oh yeah, like that was a B minus, like that was pretty good. And now it's like A plus. How could I like repeat viewings? Definitely, I found to be rewarding the same way that you did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some things that did pop out to me that I thought was kind of, I don't know if it was like intentional or unintentional. Was the the kind of the recurrence? I think the piano kind of pops back in like three specific times, or like the piano's a focus. Like the first time when the I can't old man Perrin, the father of the Perrin family is like downstairs. I think when they first go into that basement and there's a piano and he plays like the dun dun dun
Yep.
whatever on the keys, and later like the piano is like the piano fall or something crashes on the piano. It just gives that like loud kind of dissonant, noisy, like all keys at one time sound.
Yeah.
It was just kind of I thought was funny, but I don't know if any of that was intentional. I didn't do any research on it, but little things like that. And there I feel like there are kind of some of the silly like horror movie tropes, like the silently not silently the creaking, opening door where it's like kind of scenes, so
Yep.
I got a crack out of that. But in setting up, I was going to ask you too, I wonder, I had to look this up actually, was the scenes where they finally bring all of like the equipment in, the paranormal equipment, like the mics and the headphones, and they're walking around the house and they're setting up all like the thermal, was it like the thermal detection for if there's like a drop of temperature, it would take the photos and stuff like that when they're setting everything up.
Right.
That was like, and I think they asked when they first go into the basement with all that equipment on, and they just have like the one light, it's like a flashlight or whatever, the light that's on the camera, and
Uh-huh.
they're kind of going around and there's like kind of spot checking different areas in the room with the mic. Um, I was like, oh my god, I wonder if this inspired Ghost Hunters or was inspired by Ghost Hunters, the TV show. But it
Right?
looks like Ghost Hunters came out like started in 2004. I was like, oh okay, all right, maybe a
But
little.
it makes you wonder if Ed and Lorraine inspired like the original Ghost Hunters, like
Oh yeah, good
the
call,
original
good
Ed and
call,
Lorraine Warren. There's probably something to that.
good call. That's That's another thing that piqued my interest too. Is like I didn't know that these were real people. I didn't
Yes.
go too far down that rabbit hole. Do you have what's your knowledge of the history of these two individuals?
So I'll preface by saying limited, but what I will say is I think like a week or two back there's a podcast I listened to called Astonishing Legends, and it's great. I mean, it's kind of, think of it like the X Files. Like they talk about UFOs, ghosts, and both of the hosts strike me as believers. They maintain that they're skeptic, but I think they're skeptical believers. Anyway, they did an episode on the oldest daughter. Her name is Andrea Perron, played in the film by, I don't know if I'll be able to find the actress, but she wrote three books called House of Darkness, House of Light, and the true story of the Conjuring is, I think, what it's supposed to say. Um,
Oh.
and she kind of chronicles what actually happened to her family in the house. And, there's some similarities, some crossovers, but I think it might have been a bit more um, contentious with Ed and Lorraine in the real life version. And this is where, like, I don't claim to be an expert. I haven't done enough research because I've heard several things. I've heard that in the movie, I think you said they kind of initially seemed as evangelicals, but you end up liking them at the end. I think part of that is because they start with debunking a different house, you know
Hmm.
so right away it's like, okay, maybe they do lean more towards science, and we'll deal with spiritual if we absolutely have to, if that's what it is. But I've also heard conflicting reports that, like, they were actually more keen to say, "Oh, it's a ghost. It's a ghost." It wasn't the wind. So it's the jury's still out, and like I said, I have not done nearly enough research. I do think it's fair to say that they get the most favorable portrayal in the movies than in
Mm.
other documentation of them.
Right. So if they are running a business, right, on exorcising demons from your home, right?
Uh
They're
huh.
like, you call them up. They're like, yeah, we'll come there. We'll give you like a free. inspection for the paranormal in your home. And if we don't find anything, there's no cost to you. So when you go there, it's like we're gonna find something, right? Creaking pipes, right? Stuff like that. We're like, well, we'll take care of this demon for you, but it's
Right.
gonna cost you a little bit. We're gonna
Right.
need you to leave the house for a few days, and then while they're gone, you have someone to come in, like Bob that that lives down the road from you. You just tell them like, yeah, it's a cousin of mine. They need some pipes fixed in their home that are kind of creaking or cracking. So can you just come over there and fix that? And they fix that up, and they have the family come back. They're like, got rid of your spirits. I'm going on a tangent, but you know what I'm saying. You
I know
get the
what you're
drift.
saying.
You get my drift. So like it was maybe I guess I didn't look into either to see if they were making any sort of income off this as like some sort of possible grift.
Well,
Uh,
and again, grain of salt, but I think that I don't know if they actually got compensation for like an exorcism or a blessing itself, but I do know that I think you could tour their room of artifacts. Like I think that was real. And I think that they would
yes.
charge a fee to tour the room like PT Barnum would. That's not a perfect
Right.
comparison, but you know what
Right.
I mean.
Yes, exactly. Actually, do you know where that's at? That's something I just found out today as well. Their little is it because it's yeah, it's in their home like it was in this movie, right?
Oh yeah, where they definitely they show it in the movie because um yeah, a big part is they have to get home and protect Judy, but that's
Right,
actually a
because
diversion so that the mom can off her children. And where is their home? Oh shoot, I'm not seeing it. No, I'm not seeing it.
okay.
But
I
I mean,
just we're talking about criticism, so I'm just going to read this little bit from Wikipedia here. It says
okay,
according to a 1997 interview with the Connecticut Post that investigated the Warrens for the New England Skeptical Society, they found the couple to be pleasant people, but their claims of demons and ghosts to be, quote, at best, tellers of meaningless ghost stories, and at worst, dangerous frauds, unquote. They took the $13 tour and looked at the evidence the Warrens had for spirits and ghosts. They watched the videos and took at the best evidence They watched the videos and looked at the best evidence the Warrens had. Their conclusion: it's all blarney. They found common errors with flashy photography and nothing evil in the artifacts that the Warrens had collected. They have a ton of fish stories about the evidence they got, but they're not doing good scientific investigation. Blah, 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 blah. Kind of what I think you would expect from somebody like doing some skeptics doing investigation on
right.
paranormal ghost hunters. So
Exactly. Yeah, if
not
they
gonna
drew
go
any other conclusion, it would be groundbreaking, right?
right, right. Right. So on that, that was just what was I just going to ask you? Reading that made me think of this. Da, 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 da. Oh, made me think of the common errors found in flash photography. Blah 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 blah. So I wanted this to kind of lead into our kind of little offline chat about uh, ghost stories and pictures,
Yeah.
really quick. Is the some like the photography scenes in the film just all of a sudden reminded me it was like, oh my god, I totally forgot about this. I think it was when I was like probably 12 or 13. It wasn't too long after I moved back up here from Texas. I went with my brother somewhere. I think he's maybe like helping this woman with like some kind of like housework, maybe I can't remember, like it had something to do with like the work he was doing. And I went over there with him, and this woman, older woman, like very like old, senior, retired, had this picture on like her side table,
Uh-huh.
and it was like this black and white photo with like clouds, and it had like this image of like you've probably seen like a million times on any kind of like religious like text or whatever, but of like Jesus coming down and like had like his palms out, like coming
Uh-huh.
down from the clouds, stuff like this has been like faked and, um, you know, to create all different kinds of hoaxes and different manners. But it kind of freaked me out because it looked real. And she told this story about how when like she was, I don't remember the reasons why, but was on a plane many years ago. And just, I think, how she said like her husband randomly took like a photo out the window of this plane to get a picture of the clouds. Then when they get back home, whenever they develop their film, and this is the image that they got from their film that they developed, and it's that image that I sent you, and which always creeped me out for the longest time. I guess I would classify myself as agnostic. I don't really believe in any of that, but it just freaked me out for the longest time as a kid. And I know my brother still has like a copy of it that he made
Uh-huh.
at his house, but that was a moment in the film. It just made me trigger this memory, and I was like, holy shit. But anyway, I Googled it today just to see if it's like, well, if it's maybe like something that was created as like a hoax back in the day, like mass produced somehow. It's like there might be something on it. And lo and behold, I found tons of different images of the same photo that
Okay.
allegedly this woman, she said that was her husband that took this photo. And it's, yeah. And I did see like there was some varying stories online about how the picture was taken, but for the most part, like that was the same story about, this man that took this random shot out this window of a plane and got
So
this.
so you're saying that you found a bunch of reproduced copies of her photo, or she reappropriated the story?
I think it was, I mean, so this is like early 90s. She was probably in her 80s,
Okay.
like late 70s. So, and I think some of the stories I've seen was like maybe younger family members, like daughters or granddaughters sharing the story. And I don't
Uh-huh.
know if it's the same woman, but like the stories line up with what I remember.
Okay.
But I wasn't able to find anything that would link her to like, oh yeah, she was in Faribault, Minnesota, whatever. But
Okay. So
it
it
was,
became lore. I think I think this is
yes.
fascinating because I think about this a lot with this movie is, and granted it's, this movie's like drawing on the Amityville Horror, which the Warrens are tied to. There's a little
Hmm.
poltergeist in there, a ton of horror, but how
Yeah.
these stories actually become lore in the United States. And I think it happens a lot more in New England because it's older. There's more history to draw from. And I think ghosts in general are more reported and prevalent in New England because it's older and the history is deeper. But European history, just to be perfectly clear.
Right.
Um,
Good call.
yeah. But this is what I find fascinating about this movie is how these stories, and it's so hard to identify the source that they become lore, and they kind of go into this in that episode I mentioned in Astonishing Legends. So if anyone has like um, desire for further research, go check out that episode. It's so good because they talk about the book, they talk about Perron, and just the stories that kind of get mixed in here and some of the inaccuracies and all that stuff. But then they bring up like, well, if just because that person didn't die on that property, can ghosts not move around? Are they
Right. Right.
restricted to, like, we don't know the rules if ghosts exist. Like, we don't know what their rules of travel are. You know, that's silly to assume. But I'm rambling. But the point I was making is that I love how these stories of lore and ghosts and specific things pop up, and you don't quite know its origin. Like I'm thinking of one of your favorite series, The Haunting at Hill House. There's did you get to the episode with the bent neck lady?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched the whole series.
Okay. Chad is not a fan of this series. I am. But I just bring that up as an example because the bent neck lady, that
Yeah.
story is in Andrea Perron's book, and she claims that happened to her mom,
Oh.
Carolyn Perron. So it's
That her
it's
mom got the bent neck?
no, that her
Or
mom,
just
like the bent neck
experienced that?
lady,
Okay,
yeah, the
gotcha.
bent neck lady was like tormenting her mother. And granted,
Ah.
it wasn't the same one from Haunting at Hill House,
Right.
but it's two families, big haunted house, and they're both identifying the same monster. And
Right.
those are the details that I love. Like,
Right.
okay, where did that come from, and how are we collectively creating these things? So I rambled. I'm
No, I
sorry.
like that. I like that. I've never really thought about this before. Like this, it's lore, right? It's not. I'm just thinking like bent neck lady, right? Like somewhere I'm thinking that this story is being passed along somehow,
Yeah,
but it's not like huge, right? It's not like it's like everyone knows the story. It's like it's like the hipster of ghost stories, you know? It's like it's not going to sell out. It's only going to go to like the really cool like down and out people, right? But I like that.
it's the modest
Or
mouse of yeah,
the
or
but
uh,
also like also I'm trying to think of how to explain this actually. Or if you're not a skeptic, is that these these things paranormal things are there's these similarities across all these different experience that you see, or maybe what you're seeing is right, that's the best thing you can make out of what you're seeing, but
right,
maybe that's not actually what you're seeing, but if that
right,
makes any sense.
totally. It's these
Your perception
uh,
of it, like that you see a bent neck lady, but what are you actually seeing that you can't perceive?
yeah, it's like this is the stuff that freaks me out. Like I've talked to a couple people who have done like ayahuasca or similar hallucinogenics, and
Oh yeah.
it's in similarly to ghosts, they will describe similar figures, albeit a little bit differently, like mama ayahuasca, I think, is a big one. And that's
Mm,
people who have completely different, because it's in your mind. It's
yeah.
everything you see is in your mind, but they can all identify this one common thing or creature or commonalities in between it. And I think, like, I consider myself a skeptic, but then I hear stuff like that, and that's the kind of stuff that knocks me on my ass. It's like, well, how can like three different minds with different lived experiences who are taking the same drug experience a same vision of something they've never seen before previously?
Right. Right.
And there may be an explanation. Maybe they heard of it. Maybe that's something they're bringing into their trip. There might
That
always be an explanation, but
yeah, that reminds me of when I had this very short period of time where I was like dropping lots of acid.
mhm.
And my favorite thing to do was to drop acid. And we called it the 100-foot tunnel in Faribault. And it used to be like an old, like, I don't even know what the true lore is, but it's really close to this old like day camp and school for like it's by like the deaf or the school for like the hearing impaired, and it's also by this old day camp where it was like a boarding house,
Mhm.
I think, and there's like an old unmarked grave. I think they actually marked the grave not too long ago. This is all like by the train tracks. On the other side of the tracks is this long tunnel. We call it the 100-foot tunnel. Well, we would drop acid, go down there. It's like pitch dark.
Oh my god.
And like you would see like crazy. I wouldn't see the bent neck lady, but I was like, one time I was like, I saw like these kind of like tall, skinny, like humanoid, like, arms, legs, like bodies, like
Yeah.
no definition to them, but just like they were just like kind of stretching out into the sky. And I thought I saw stars, but I was in a tunnel.
Right. Right. Right.
It
Oh,
also made me think of I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no, go ahead.
I was just listening to this guy just wrote this book called like your brain on plants or something like
Oh,
that.
Michael Pollan.
Michael Pollan, yeah, he was on Joe Rogan, and he was also on
Larry Wilmore.
Larry Wilmore's podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard that he was saying like they were finding that, was it called Arnott or some chemical that's like a hallucinogen, and they found traces of it on these chalice cups that they use for um geez, what's that called? You drink the wine, you eat the body of Christ,
Oh,
the
communion?
communion. Like when they do the communion cup, they found traces of like this hallucinogen on the cup, and they're like, "Oh, this was used back in, I don't know, like whatever, hundreds of years ago for communion." And it's like, "Oh, was this part of the experience? The religious experience was like, were these hallucinogens used in um,
Oh, no way.
communion as well?" And like like use like they've said too, like they're talking about like just these different uses of hallucinogens through these other like religious experiences. And so kind of made me think of what you're saying too about these people that have kind of like these shared experiences that don't know one another, but the stories sound almost identical.
Right.
So I like that. There's something trapped deep in our brain that's being released somehow.
Right. Well, and it was almost more fun before the internet too, because like you would hear a story, and I go to a different state or whatever, and it's like, how do you know about that too?
Right.
Like Bloody
Exactly.
Mary or whatever. Pick
Yes.
your favorite urban legend. And yeah, before information got way more easier to access and send, it was a lot more, I guess, just fun or confounding even. Like, wait, how do you
Right.
know about that?
Right. That also makes me think of you were more it made it more believable that a based on a true story movie was actually true.
Yeah.
Yeah. When like, I feel like nowadays like everything is like based on a true story. Like, yeah, they kind of take some liberties with that line, that statement.
Right. Right. Yeah, unless we have like documentary footage of Michael Jordan winning the 98 championship. It's like, I don't know.
Right. Might have happened.
Yeah, maybe not.
He might be a basketball player. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. What's let's see here. Do 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 do. I was gonna say I feel for the unbaptized children in this film
Oh
because when
yeah.
they go to the priest to get whatever permission
Uh-huh.
or guidance to do the God, the not seance, the exorcism,
Yes.
and the priest says he's like, well, the children they're not baptized. I'm just like, oh, I feel you, kids. I'm not baptized either. I've been, I haven't ran away from that criticism from family in a long time. And now that I have my own kids now, we get asked all the time when we're going to baptize them. So and I was like, yeah, I don't think agnostics baptize, but I'll look into that.
I like that note. I don't think they do, but I'll look into that.
All right. So I did tell you that I love the film or like the film. Yeah. I did have some things that I thought were kind of funny, and I wanted to ask you if you had an answer for them.
Yes, let's
So when they
go.
talk about when was a Bathsheba the one that hung herself?
Yep, Bathsheba.
Bathsheba,
Yeah.
right? So do they literally mean that she hung herself on that tree by the house, or is that just supposed to be like a just a representation of the act? Because in my head I'm thinking like, well, if the tree, if this like takes place what, like 40 years after that,
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing, like, do you think the tree was that tall when she actually hung herself? Because I was like, well, maybe the
That's
tree wasn't.
that's that's a
That's
damn good point. That's a 100-year-old tree right there. That's which is not impossible. I'm gonna Google the age of an oak tree, but you're right, it would be a lot smaller.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, the branch probably wasn't there. It was like a smaller branch. I don't know if that would have held her weight, but I was like, maybe she's a very tiny person. I don't know.
Oh, here we go. Under perfect conditions, so one would assume uncursed land, a white oak can live to be 300 or more years old.
Okay, all right.
So plausible. I like
So we're
your
guessing this could be a very we're just going to go with very old oak tree.
yeah. I like your challenge though, because that's like
Again, these are the things I thought of. but I wasn't gonna let it ruin the movie for me. Because I
Right.
was like what else was going on. Because I'm more interested in the lore of everything in that room or whatever is going on in that doll.
Right.
That's another thing I forgot to touch on too. I like how the movie opens,
Oh,
which
with the
this
Annabelle.
yeah. So we have that, but then I like how it stops and we get this little like text that scrolls that kind of explain like gives you a quick little background on Ed and Lorraine. And just how that scroll I think it just scrolls past the screen or maybe it fades up and fades away. But that
Yep.
was really cool because that gave me like a unsolved mysteries moment or something like that of like a show of that caliber, or
Yeah.
just like where you get like the freeze frame and like these ended up being victims of so and so or something like that. It gave me that I really like that because I think sometimes horror movies for me like the openings can be a little I don't know. I can see how this could have came up like really campy too, and I feel like it really nailed it. Um,
I agree. Well, in the opening too, that could be a short film. It's
yeah.
a contained
Oh
little
yeah.
story with the
Yeah.
doll.
Yes. I found that very cool. Very cool. And again, that's what I started watching that and I was like, what is this Conjuring thing? Because I think that's when I was like, we got to do the Conjuring. I'm
Yes.
my interest is peaked now. Um, but
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, I'm pumped.
for sure. I had another question for you.
You're
Damn it.
It's right here. How did they know the witch died at exactly 3:07
Oh yeah.
a.m.?
Yes, right.
Great point. The sundial in the yard froze.
Right. And then again, were they talking about was that the time the witch died or the time when Bath
Oh, I just
Bathsheba died? Well, they said
um
Bathsheba was no wait, Bathsheba was a relative of one of the witches from Salem, right?
I
That was
think so.
yeah.
Yeah, relative of Marytown Eastie.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it does the movie does declare that Bathsheba killed herself at 3:07 in the morning.
Okay.
And yeah.
He's like, it's 307 girls.
Right.
It's
Great point. I think I mean I think that's probably a nod to Amityville Horror. I guess George Lutz consistently wakes up at 3:15 a.m. and they kind
oh
of say
yeah.
it. I mean, like Ed Warren says that's the devil's hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do like your point. It's like, yeah, we how do we know that was the time?
I think I woke up at 3:15 a.m. today.
Dude,
I'm
this
just
happened to me like 2 weeks ago. I had a bad dream and I woke up and I looked and it was 3:07. I was like, fuck.
That's awesome. That's
uh
awesome. I also had
yeah.
like another bad night of sleep like last week too, and I woke up like at it was like 2:30. I woke up, like kids waking you up, and I can't get back to sleep. Then I finally like lay back down. I'm like super tired. I feel relaxed. Then my dog gets up and needs to go outside. I'm just like, ugh. And then I just go online and I go through like my Twitter feed. And like one of the first tweets I saw was somebody saying, "Hey, are you not having like a great night of sleep either?" or something like that. Something about sleep. But it was like a tweet from like hours before, and it was from like somebody from like UK. So it's like there's just odd timing. Like maybe there's something going on in the world right now, or we're passing through a comet's tail. I don't know.
I think we are, man. My sleep's been pretty spotty these past couple
Yeah,
weeks.
I'm blaming on all the probably the air quality.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's more scientific.
All right. Oh, one other thing is I had one of my other knits picks that I have is I have this with any kind of movie that takes place in the past, whether it's like I don't know, probably any more than like maybe 10 years ago or 20 years, maybe more than like 20 years ago
Uh-huh.
when they tried to do like the costume design for the characters. I feel it just bugs me when everybody's like clothing looks too clean. And in this movie, like everyone's clothes like fits the era, but everyone's clothes is like too clean. Like
Oh,
everything kind of
interesting.
looks like it just was purchased off the rack, at retro
Yeah.
apparel and accessories.
Yeah.
And that bugs me too. And like anytime it's like, say if it's like a film that's set in the 60s, it's like everybody has a car that was made in the 60s. And like, oh, like you got to think of like people, people didn't always have a lot of money, right? So like people were probably driving older cars. It'd be nice to see some like cars that are maybe from the 50s or maybe kind of rusting out a little bit or like in rough shape.
Right?
So that always kind of bothers me, like when everything is just kind of like clean and crisp, especially like the cameraman dude in his like brown leather jacket. That thing was
Oh, I can see
way
that.
too clean, way too clean. Everyone's hair is like way too clean. Everyone looked like they just like washed their hair before they went right onto the set. Like, I want to see some like greasy hair, maybe like a stain on a shirt, or Ed's like a sweater vest or whatever the hell he's wearing is like maybe has some more pillowing on it or something. But
Oh,
again, I didn't let that ruin the film for me. So
that's a very specific criticism.
yeah.
I'm all about it though. That's it's funny how these weird things just kind of bother. It's this is not the same at all, but kind of. It's
Mm,
the reason I never started that HBO show Chernobyl is because everyone's speaking English, and for whatever reason, my mind just like they're in Russia. Why aren't they speaking Russian? And
right.
and I swear to God, that's like the one hang up that's prevented me from starting it. It's supposed to be a great series, and I'm sure it is. But
Oh, it is. It has Jared Harris in it, man.
yes, the great Russian actor Jared Harris.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't usually bother me.
Yeah.
Actually, it bothers me more when, if like say this was like Chernobyl, it would bother me more if everyone was speaking English in like a Russian accent.
Yes, yes, that's very fair. I mean, yeah, at least they didn't do that.
Oh man. All right. Do you have anything else, Jamie, you want to discuss about this
I
film?
no, I think we did pretty good justice. Real quick though, I wanted to know if you did have any favorite scenes or sequences.
Oh yeah. That's a great question for a movie podcast. Uh, I Let me think of it. What about you?
Okay. I'm trying to think of a specific scene, but I think I really enjoyed the sequence where they're trying to get back home to Judy and Lorraine loses her locket in the I think it's in the basement after she
Oh,
falls
yep.
through the house.
Hmm.
And yeah, just the way that the darkness kind of comes down the hallway after Judy and just the sense of creeping dread and kids in danger always works.
Yes. Yep.
Pins and needles like, oh man, you guys get home to your kid. Um, I really like that. And for some reason, this wasn't a scene per se, but the the character Brad in this movie, the police officer,
Oh,
I
Officer Brad.
Officer Brad, he just cracked me up. I was all about Officer Brad in this movie for this watch. I don't know why.
Yeah, he's kind of a goofball.
Yeah.
I know there was like the scene where like he comes out of the bathroom. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
oh, because like the bell starts ringing on the bathroom knob door or bathroom doorknob, and he just comes out of there like after he flushes the toilet. It's kind of
Gooper.
comical. But then
Right.
in my head, I'm just like, man, what? I don't understand why. Why did you have to put that in there?
Sure.
But
That's fair.
and then like the kind of little back and forth. Actually, I'm not going to nitpick this anymore. I did enough already. Some of my favorite scenes. I did really like the opening of this movie. Like you said, it's kind of like that story within a story thing. But
Mhm.
actually, I really kind of like the part where she's hanging up like sheets or whatever on the clothesline, and like the
Uh-huh.
gust of wind comes and it like
Yes.
blows off, and it like you can see like the shape of the body and the sheet, and then it just like takes off. It goes up to the window. So that
Yes.
was that was really cool. And I know they did some really cool effects on that, but again, I think the effects in this movie were done so well. Like it blended in so well that I wasn't able to really tell like if it was like CGI or not, or some really cool practical effects. But then I also
Right.
have to say too, the exorcism part, which again, for me, it just still it comes off a little campy, but also I thought it was really cool, like when like she stops shaking around in the chair,
Uh-huh.
and then like everything stops and gets quiet. And I
Yeah.
have to give a nod to the swinging light bulb because
Yeah.
that thing doesn't stop. But like the chair, like also like it's quiet, and the chair starts to rise
Yeah.
and turns over.
You're like,
It's like yeah. I mean, it's like I was like, I don't. I'm in the back of my head. I'm like, I shouldn't like this, but I think this is really cool. When you have the chair slamming like upside down on the ceiling, so it was kind of yeah, I like that.
oh, I love it. I yeah, this is I'm glad you brought up the sheet scene. I'm changing my answer to that. I always forget about that scene. It's like it sneaks up on me, and
Hmm.
I think it's one of the scariest sequences in the movie.
Yeah, and it has like a cool like the just the sound effects on that is really
Yes.
cool too, and
Yes.
so I give that. What would you did you give this score on your letterbox?
Oh shoot, I sure did. Let me see if I can find it. It's in the 4 to 5 range. I can't remember if I gave it a 4, 4.5, or a 5. What'd you give it while I look?
I gave it. Let me see here. I think I gave it a 3.
Okay.
I think I still gave it a 3. But again, I'm in for I could see the sequel maybe being better than this one, but we'll find out. But because we're gonna do that one next, I
Yes.
believe. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm excited too. I've only seen Conjuring 2 once, and I don't remember if I liked it more than the first one or
all
not.
right.
Oh, and real quick before we go, I just wanted to shout out this movie because I think it's overlooked. Um, so James Wan, he directed famously Saw, and checking to see if he directed any of the other movies in this franchise. Um,
I think he did. Didn't he also do two?
yep, you're right. He did too. Um, but his movie Dead Silence, did you ever see that one, Chad?
No, I did not.
It's you'll recognize the movie cover. It's the one with like the Slappy the dummy with the finger over his mouth. It
Oh yeah.
it I bought it on a whim because it was James Wan, and I was like, oh, it's one of his earlier movies. I wonder if it's any good. It is so great. It's like a awesome underrated B horror movie that I feel like nobody saw, or if they saw it, like nobody mentioned it. It's he does a lot of his cool tricks, some similar like monster aesthetics he brings into this movie. It's like I said, it's kind of B movie. It's kind of goofy with
Okay.
the what are they called? Ventriloquist dummies, but
Oh yeah. Yep.
it's a lot of fun. So I would say anyone who hasn't seen Dead Silence, check that one out.
That's now that you've explained that movie to me, and the name of that movie is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, should we wrap it up?
Yep.
All right. Before we go, I want to thank you for downloading this episode of Movie Time Machine Monster Closet Edition. Remember, new episodes drop on Fridays. Please send your questions, comments, and feedback to movietimemachinepod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @MovieTimeMachine. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.